Can you beat Remnant 2 without an archetype? Is a question I have asked myself since the game came out back in July. Well, today we're going to answer that question. Now you may be saying to yourself, hey, you can't unequip your Prime archetype. This is true. There is no way in-game to remove it, and the game forces you to choose one in the tutorial, and when choosing to skip it when making a new character. So, it's impossible, right? Well, on consoles, yeah. However, on PC, we can do a little bit of save trickery to make it work. Basically, we need to get a new character through the tutorial until they are inside of the old ward. Remnant 1 and 2 have two separate types of saves, one that contains all of your character data, and 5 others that hold their associated world data. We take this save, delete the new character, make another new character, and then replace that save with the one from earlier. When you load in, the new character will be inside the old ward. The reason why we make the save here is so we can grab the Dragon Heart. You could definitely skip past this area though, if you wanted an even greater challenge. To keep things interesting, and to challenge myself more, I self-imposed some restrictions on what was allowed during the run. Number 1. No account-bound weapons or trinkets. As you probably know, Reggie and Brabus sell a ton of impactful account-bound equipment. Using any of it would make the challenge way too easy. Number 2. No glitched items. There are a few bugged trinkets that would also make this run trivial. So no Stone of Malevolence, Phelan, or Faerun's Ring. Number 3. No Litos or Enigma. Both of these are super cheesy, and I just didn't feel like using them. Number 4. No Adventure Mode. To prevent me from just demolishing the final boss by getting there and then doing some adventures to upgrade easily, I restricted myself to only visiting areas within my campaign, and this resulted in some problems later down the line. And with that, the challenge begins. The first stop on my run was Losomn, specifically the Nightweaver storyline. Upon facing the first strand, I immediately noticed how bad things were going to be. Starting with no archetype means starting with rusty weapons, and these were beyond useless. I pretty much ran through the first area and arrived in Cotton's Kiln. Seeing how the area was now level 2, I decided to head back to the ward. Using what little scrap I had, I bought the Western Classic. I also used my Root Ganglia to grab Healing Shot. With my new tools in hand, I returned to the kiln. And my damage is still piss. On top of that, since my rusty lever action has no stagger damage bonus, only headshots can easily stun them. This is definitely one of the worst places I could have ended up at the start of the game. I wound up punching as many Dran as I could to prevent them from igniting. Along the way, I came by the bird injectable. I decided on playing incredibly safe, but in the end I got 2 new necklaces that I wouldn't use for the rest of the run. A few deaths later and I finally made it to Gwendol. This fight was a real endurance test, all because of this one little modifier. Regenerator in the early game of an Apocalypse run can be really annoying. I have all the stopping power of a wet napkin being thrown in front of a speeding 18-wheeler. Even when shooting her grenades, you can see how fast her health comes back. Couple that with the gun ads and burning Dran, and yeah, you can see why this fight kinda sucked. The burning Dran alone was enough to distract me long enough for Gwendol to get all her health back. Because of this, I ended up going back to Brabus, selling some things, and buying the Widowmaker. This turned out to be the perfect choice, as I now had a weapon that could insta-kill the gunners and stagger the burning Dran. And although it took me 15 minutes and all of my ammo boxes, I finally put her down. Looking back at the footage, the amount of health she healed was, to put it lightly, fucking absurd. Like, there was a moment where I had her at about a quarter, and then before I knew it, she was above half again. That's one bust down, plenty more to go. After climbing up a clock and falling off, my next stop was Butcher's Quarter. Here I watched a man burn to death, and grabbed Burden of the Warlock, a ring I would pretty much use for the rest of the run. I then went back and visited Cass. She ended up having 2 of the best necklaces I could have possibly asked for. This was just one of several times she just happened to have a goated inventory in the run. Next up was the Asylum. Here I picked up what would be my secondary for the rest of the run, the Double Barrel. This weapon is powerful, as you all know. Getting it made me feel optimistic about the rest of the challenge. Ripsaw wasn't tough, but I did end up running out of ammo at about a third of his health bar. Nothing a bit of fisticuffs couldn't fix. After talking to Blue Lady, I ran through Forsaken Quarter and made it to Gilded Chambers. I knew the second I got here, I was farming coins. It went mostly smooth. Except for the first coin. I thought I was being kinda slick by killing the knight in the elevator when he was trapped. I then proceeded to waste 15 minutes in a futile attempt to grab the coin from under the elevator. I guess I kinda deserved it. After a few more deaths, I got all 3 coins. I went to the Red Prince to claim my prize, another death. Blood draw, as buggy as it is, would be a major help for the rest of the run. After returning to the asylum, I entered the Nightweaver's realm. This would be the real test. If I could beat this boss, there would be hope for me for the rest of the game. Of the 2/3 Losomn world bosses, Nightweaver is the one I have the least experience with. Coupled with my lack of skills and damage sources, my confidence wasn't very high. Blood draw has really good potential. It deals a decent chunk of damage, applies bleed, can hit up to 5 targets, gives you poise, and has a very cheap cost. The only issue is its consistency. Half the time you'll fire it and nothing happens, leaving you open to easy punishment. Thank God it has a cheap cost. I imagine people would be a lot more upset by the mod if it had a 700 plus cost. Hitting Nightweaver in the first phase with it is fairly consistent. However, the second phase made me think it was non-functional. Thankfully, after some experimentation, I found that aiming way above her makes it hit almost every time. I don't know if this is a bug with blood draw specifically, or some weird enemy hitbox issue. After a few more deaths, I actually managed to pull through. I thought it would take me like 10 attempts minimum. Maybe this was a sign that the run would actually not be that bad. The Labyrinth was pretty easy, as I expected. I mean, I still died, but I did grab a few important things for the run. Since I don't have access to skills, mods are the next best option for me to invest in. Ruined Heart would be my relic of choice for the remainder of the run. While the healing is fairly low, the mod generation is what I care about. Although 500 isn't a ton for a lot of mods. However, with Burden of the Warlock, we reduce the cost of all mods, making the amount of mod power granted by Ruined Heart that much more impactful. The Siege and Cube boss were both a breeze. And with the Labyrinth completed, I was off to world number 2, which was Yaesha. And thankfully it was the Empress's storyline, which means I would only have to fight one required dungeon boss. After some formalities with the Empress, I returned to Ward 13. Cass came in clutch with the Ikari Warband, and I picked up Nightfall. This gun would stay in my primary slot nearly the rest of the run. Heading back to Yaesha, I fought some Root and met the Floating Blue Lady. Here I was split between getting Bloodstream and Barkskin. Bloodstream would help with chip damage, but Barkskin would let me tank heavier hits. I ended up taking Bloodstream, although later on, you'll see why I wish I had grabbed the alternative. Twisted Chantry was the dungeon I'd have to fight through. The injectable here was the one with the rot operation. As soon as I saw that coffin, I knew I had to go in, as the feeding rot grants the extender mutator. Before hopping in, I fought a Reaver and then my game crashed. Thanks, Gunfire. The first attempt, I got him to around half health and then ran out of ammo. On the second attempt, I ran past 2 Lemire Necromancers, which caused every Pan-Root zombie to come back as the exploding variants. Awesome. The third time, I grabbed the boss checkpoint and then looped rot around some stone railings. It took a little while, but I finally got him. With Extender in my possession, I promptly returned to Dwell to upgrade it. Thankfully, we only need to level it to +3 to gain the additional shell on the double barrel. This alone is a massive damage boost. Returning back to Legion, I actually beat him on my first try. I got into the flow of just wiping out the adds that would spawn, and then shooting the giant lens. I pretty much never had an issue with ammo, and that extra shot in the double barrel made wiping the adds very easy. This was the fight where I realized just how strong Dreadfall's lifesteal is. Combined with easy mod power gen from the adds, I pretty much always had it up. Whatever chip damage Legion lobbed my way was no issue. Granted, the fight did take me 22 minutes, but hey, that's another boss down. After a quick stroll through the Blood Moon, I arrived at the Widow's Court. I ran through pretty quickly, but would come back here after some boss attempts. My first scuffle with many faces showed that my damage was very lacking, but it is Corruptor. If I could take down many faces at least twice, I could easily finish it off. I went back to the ward and chatted up Mudtooth to get the Gunslinger's ring. I then decided to head back to the Empress to give her the box, since I wanted the dough amulet. I then realized I never actually activated the World Stone there and had to take the long way. I then also realized I forgot to grab the box. I went back to the court, died, grabbed the box, went to the court again, died again, grabbed the Rotten Thane fruit for Ghost Shell, and went back to the Corruptor. This attempt was not the one, although my damage was far better. I traveled back to the ward to upgrade my relic and grab Fargazer. I also stopped by the Blood Altar to grab a Sanguine Vapor. My plan here was to have my mods up as soon as possible. The extra charges of Ruined Relic would let me activate Dreadwalker and Fargazer more often. After 2 more deaths, I managed to finish off Corruptor. My build was really starting to come together. With these 2 weapons, I could take on the world. On to Nerude. Sadly, we got the Shahala storyline. Would have been nice to only fight 1 dungeon boss, but we do what we must. The basic and even elite enemies of the overworlds aren't really much of a challenge anymore. I stopped by the Custodians for some easy scrap, and made my way to the hatchery. The injectable here was the Floating Chamber event. I managed to grab every trinket and then drown. I also didn't use any of these trinkets for the rest of the run. Good use of my time, I know. As for Primogenitor, he only killed me 1 time. Even with her generator, it was no match for my setup. After a quick stroll through the Timeless Horizon and grabbing the Override pin, I fought my way through Spectrum Nexus. The Custodian's Eye did manage to get me 6 times. That damn barrage attack can be a real shit show to evade. I used to like the gimmick of the moving floors in the fight, but now I feel like they only serve to screw you over during that attack in particular. Gripes aside, that was another boss down. Now for the showdown with Shahala. This fight wasn't too bad. I did die 3 times though. Fargazer has an issue where it doesn't lock onto him unless you're really close to the edge of the platform, so that did cause me to lose that on some damage, but like with other bosses, Nightfall came in clutch. I did head back to the ward to grab another Sanguine Vapor, and to check by Cass, who was selling the Ring of Flawed Beauty, so I definitely had to grab that. The final laser dance is what killed me before, so I opted to run the Pocket Watch to let me spam dodges more often. Turns out this is exactly what I needed, as I beat him on the next attempt. That was every world boss defeated. Now it's time for the gauntlet. Root Earth was by far the most challenging area of the run, for multiple reasons. You see, to make sure players level up their archetype and upgrade weapons, they force a minimum level scaling across the campaign, which in theory sounds fine. From the beginning of the game through the 3rd world boss, it's a slow and steady build-up. It does stagnate towards the last world boss. It probably could have been 10, but I understand why they might not want to gatekeep the entrance to the last area. As soon as you walk into Root Earth, you're immediately smacked with the fact that this area is level 12. This higher level does mean you'll be getting galvanized iron from chests and drops, but that's a pretty steep incline for the players who might have only been level 9 by the time they got here. It doesn't help too that I'm lacking an archetype to level up with me. Granted, power level isn't an all-encompassing display of how strong you are, rather it affects the scaling of the enemies you fight and the types of metal you'll come across. So what's the big deal? Well, personally at this point my power level was only 8, despite my weapons both being plus 10 and 9 respectively. The game calculates your power level based on the combination of your archetype and weapon upgrades. The system seems to be fine with only having 2 to base the score off of, for the beginning of the game at least. For some reason, the game seems to trip up when getting to power level 8 and beyond. This meant that any side area I entered now would only generate at 9, preventing me from earning extra galvanized iron to further level my guns. I did realize later that all I had to do was level up a melee weapon, but it begs the question why it happens in the first place. It almost certainly has to do with the fact that I don't have an archetype. So for any of you at home who want to do this run, level up a melee weapon about halfway through your run, and that should offset the stagnation of power level ascension. The first area and Siege were both pretty easy, no deaths. I also grabbed Xania's Malice because, of course, and Ankh of Power for an extra boost in total damage. Now Cancer was an, interesting fight. I don't know if God himself was trying to stop me from completing the run, but this is where the game started to kind of break down. The first bad sign was Regenerator. It wouldn't be a challenge run if Regenerator didn't make multiple problematic appearances. The second sign was his leap attack. For some reason, when he went to jump across the arena, the big root he would summon afterwards would bug out. This caused a cluster of rapidly sprouting and exploding trees to exist where he landed. Essentially, it made a big perma hurtbox. Seems bad, but that meant that the giant tentacles wouldn't spawn. Nice. I didn't mention it earlier, but this was actually my first time ever doing a fresh Apocalypse run, and holy shit, does this guy have a lot of health. I can only imagine how it would have been if he had Hardy as well. I stopped by the board and grabbed the Witchfire to help combat the health regen. On my third attempt, I was doing really well. But around a third of his bar left, I noticed something was wrong. His trees, which had previously been dropping ammo, weren't anymore. This was the third sign. God damn it. After a few more failed attempts, I finally got him down. And I confirmed a theory I had for the last hour of attempts. The glitched trees were spawning ammo packs. That's incredible. The game is actively fighting against me now. Here I decided to do a bit of resource collecting for the upcoming fights. During my trip back through Losomn, I only died one time. Thank you, Spearfae. Very cool. After about 40 minutes, I was back on that root earth grind. I scored another death from the Cancer wannabe, and got me with the blast from a root bomb plant. I then made it through the rest of the area and the siege in one piece, which was nice. Before I began Venom's fight, I made a quick stop back at the ward. Cass came in clutch again with the Burden of the Destroyer, which was incredibly helpful for these last few fights. I also picked up a Verdant Tea from Mudtooth to aid my stamina management. Up to this point, no boss had given me a double-digit death count. Venom, however, broke that record. His delayed forward slam attack was by far his deadliest move. Thankfully, I did roll some decent modifiers on him. And could you believe his health was actually reasonable? Although I did need to use at least one ammo box during the fight. Sometimes he just wouldn't spawn his spears. It doesn't help that a majority of them do appear during the attack where you need to evade multiple insta-kill pillars. Other than that, the fight really wasn't that hard. His multi-stab and double slash are both easily evadable. The only really dangerous move is the aforementioned forward slam. Another boss down, one more to go. Here we are, folks, the final boss. I honestly never thought I'd make it this far. After many hours of suffering, I finally made it. And as I had anticipated, he was the most challenging boss of the entire run. Venom was but a taste of what was to come with Annihilation. Whereas Venom only had a few moves that could one-shot me, Annihilation had multiple. As you probably noticed by now, I swapped to the Dendroid set to get a light roll. I did go back to using the Survivor set, but the small boost in DR did make a difference. It was a shame too, since my damage against him wasn't that bad. I ended up traveling back through Yaesha and Losomn. I wanted to squeeze out every side area I possibly could. I even fought Mothermind for more scrap. If you're curious on my death count from that side expedition, here's a quick montage of them. In my travels, I did come across the Royal Hunter's Bow, which I leveled up to use instead of Nightfall. I decided I needed more damage with more range, and this Fey bow fit the bill. Upon returning to the arena, I tested out a few different combinations of trinkets to see what would help me survive the one-shots. Turns out, all I really needed was a tonic from Mudtooth. Yep, it seems like the damage was just very slightly above my total health pool, so that's the one-shots taken care of. That still leaves the most dangerous move, the orbs. These fucking things are Satan's balls. Everything about them brings me immense pain. They spawn in 3 pairs of 2, you have to shoot them down within a small window, and if you don't break them, they home in on you and deal a shit ton of damage. Did I mention they hit separately too? So you can have cases where it seems like you should have been killed by them, and vice versa. It all really depends on where the positions of the orbs are in relation to the player. The further away you are, the easier it'll be to evade them should you run out of time. So you basically have to take out 3 targets within a few seconds. That might sound easy, and in a normal run you'd be right, as you have plenty of options for dealing with them. However, in this run, we don't have the luxury of Enigma or Archetype skills. You know what we do have though? Blood Draw, in all of its buggy and inconsistent fashion. This was pretty much my best option for dealing with them. The only issue, as you probably guessed, is its ability to actually work. If it only got 1 or 2, I would still have plenty of time to take out the remainder. But those times where I got omega screwed and got none, yeah, not fun. But when they do all line up and fully wipe a set of orbs, it feels like winning the lottery. The last threat is the multi-orb room attack in the Glitch Realm. This attack is deadly enough in a regular run. In this case, it's way worse. One of the best strats you can do is buy some confidence boosters. They prevent the stagger that happens every few seconds during the attack, which allows you to focus your aim on the orbs. The issue then becomes actually hitting the damn things. The visuals of the room can make it kind of hard to see where the orbs are, and the small little tiny teleports they do can literally be the difference between life and death when firing at them. If you fail to break more than one of the pairs, you can pretty much kiss your ass goodbye. No amount of defensive boosts could save me from that attack. It doesn't help too that they are really spread out, which renders my blood draw useless. My decision to use the Royal Hunting Bow was influenced by this attack, as I needed more damage than what Nightfall could put out. That's also why I slapped Hotshot on it, even though the boss had elemental resist. If the arrow didn't kill the orb, the burn dot would. Even then, there would still be a good bit of luck involved. After 17 deaths, this happened. And there you go. Remnant 2 beaten with no archetype. This was hands down the most challenging thing I've done so far in Remnant 2. Would the Broken Sword run be more difficult? Probably. As hard as it was, it actually made me appreciate the trinkets I came across way more. I would seriously recommend giving this a try if you think Apocalypse is way too easy. And with that, I'm gonna go lay down. Expect that hardcore guide to come out sometime soon. That or a video on the next patch, whichever comes first. Take it easy, everyone.